One. And we are recording with Mr. Charlie Duke and Mr. Mike Lindell. And Charlie Duke's book, Moonwalker, about walking on the moon. You're a Apollo 16 astronaut, Charlie Duke, youngest man to ever walk on the moon. I still got 2 years left before I hit that threshold. You're 35, I'm 33. I think I can still make it. And Mr. Lindell, obviously, the My Pillow guy, the Frank Speech guy, and the author of What Are the Odds? That book is in the description, which is an absolute whirlwind of a book. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Mr. Lindell said the last year has been a real tough one, and I was telling him he gets zero sympathy from me because I just finished his book, and it is just nonstop, as I just said. Bottom fourth quarter Hail Marys, bottom of the ninth Grand Slam, Game 7. You get it, you just showed me a highlight reel of like March Madness, and you're hitting every 3-pointer, and now you're telling me you're like, yeah, I don't know if we're gonna make this one, and I'm like, you get nothing from me. You can't show me that you just bench press 9,000 pounds and then complain about a push up. So maybe you should get sympathy. I'm not the one to give it to you, but I'm going to stop talking. But the primary thing is I brought up Mr. Duke a million times. He's the individual who brought me back to God, simply telling me, as a science major, to just ask God to come into my heart and treat it like a lab test, see if anything changes. And Mr. Lindell, who I'll tell my own "What Are the Odds" story at the end. Your book of truly about what are the odds is, I mean, there is no other way to describe it other than it's statistically impossible. Could you maybe jump into that, Mr. Lindell, or take it wherever you want?
Yeah, and I just did a speech in Oregon 2 days ago, and it's about, all the, election platforms and stuff, but I felt led to right before it, I did something I hadn't done in quite a few speeches. I dove into my life story and when I was saved on February 18, 2017, everybody.
Mhm.
But one of the things I led off with was a quote here in the book, and it says, I use mathematical um, probabilities to prove God exists. And as you read the book, What Are the Odds from Crack Addicts to CEO? I said, well, if you have a 1 in a million happen or a 1 in a billion, or this is just impossible, when you combine them, when you finally declare it a miracle, right? And that's where the story, where you finishing my book, all these stories. I remember a pastor. In fact, I think it's in the book. He at my corporate office in 2015, I had this huge table at that other building, and I had all the transcripts written or transcribed of all these stories I had told in my life. There were like 100 on the table, right? And I said, I don't. This is when I was putting the book together, and I said, I don't know what to leave in and what to leave out. And the pastor, he goes, Mike, he goes, reach and grab any pile. And I reached down, and I don't know, December of 1986, and I read this. He goes, read it. And I read that episode, and he looks at me and he goes, a normal person, I think you used the word normal, would surrender immediately. That's all they would have had to have, is that little mini miracle happen and go, thank you, Jesus, and full surrender. And at that time, I wasn't saved, and he goes, and he says, maybe all this that's happened in your life is so you can finally do that full surrender, and you can, then you'll be able to go out and tell other people, about the Lord. And, uh, and I looked at him, I said, have you been talking to Kendra? Because Kendra kept saying, I don't think you're saved yet. You've not done a full surrender. I said, well, I believe in God. I believe in God. And people see me on TV, always wearing my cross. And interesting, I would get in when I was the only call center, the only one taking calls. I would have people call me up and say, "Oh, you're wearing your cross. These would be Christians going, you're wearing your cross. You're using it to sell pillows." And I would get upset with them and send them pictures of me in a crack house back in the day with my same cross on it, and say, "No, I've always wanted to. God was always chasing me, and I was always, well, show me more, show me more." And
Mm.
when I process things, I would sit and talk about it. Well, like, after the bars would close back in the day, I would sit and tell my friends about the book of Revelation, and I read about when I was in jail, and they'd get saved that night, and my other friends are going, "Will you quit talking about God and stuff? We're losing friends." And but then the other people that would call in, they would call in, and they could be atheists or just completely downright, attacking me because of wearing the cross. And then I would sit there and keep them on the phone, not selling them a pillow, talking about God and the stuff in Revelation, stuff in the Bible. And once again, they would be they might get saved and go, there, take that, and I'm still not there.
And it's
But anyway,
no, and there are some kind of wild parallels in that, and that you have, your story, and then it is kind of what's the quote about disbelief or hesitant belief is in no way unfaithful. If anything, it's very faithful, and that doubting Thomas is the only one that actually touched the wound of every human that ever lived on the planet, 100 billion plus. There's only one person who actually touched the wound, the corporeal, the physical flesh of the risen. There's only one, and
right,
it's kind of like that teacher. It's like, show me your work, and I'm like, I'll show you the work. Fine, I figured it out. And you have yours, and then you have the parallel, which is Mr. Duke's, where it's truly, no pun intended, you climbed the highest heights of your field. You walked on the moon, and there is still, like you said, you come back, and there's this sort of now one. So whereas Mr. Lindell's, yours was more of the absolute bottom and God pulls you out. Mr. Duke's was more of you went to the absolute apex,
right.
but with a lack of God, what is it all? I think you said the first time we talked, Mr. Duke, is the only thing better than walking on the moon is walking with Christ. Could you maybe, Mr. Duke, provide a parallel or a contrast to Mr. Lindell's experience, if you would?
Well, yes. When I got back, I was 36 when I went to the moon.
Oh.
And in January the next year, 1973, Apollo was over. Last one had flown, it was over. And here I am, one of 12 guys that walked on the moon. And there's a frustration. What are you going to do now? Rest of your life. I mean, you reached the top. You've reached your top of your career. What are you going to do? And I got very, very frustrated. And my marriage was falling apart. My wife Dottie and I were at odds with each other. And over the next couple of years, things got worse and worse and worse. And so we were going to church, but Jesus was all head knowledge and not heart. And we'd been baptized, we'd been confirmed, we'd been everything you could do in the church, but we were without God. And so things got so bad in our marriage by October 75. She was on the verge of suicide and no hope. Why live any longer? Life's so bad and miserable and unhappy. Why? If there's no hope, go ahead and end the misery.
Yeah.
Well, we had some people come to our church called in a little Episcopal church in LaPorte, Texas, and it was a weekend called Faith Alive, and 10 couples maybe, and they all shared their faith, 15, 20-minute testimonies about how Jesus had changed their life, and they had a joy and a love and a peace about them all. And so after that weekend was over, Dottie went home and went into our bedroom and closed the door and had a conversation with God. He said, I've tried everything but Jesus. These people have changed their lives because of Jesus. If you're real, God, I give you my life. If you're not, I want to die. Well, Jesus revealed himself to her over the next couple of months, and I watched her change from sadness to joy. 2 years later, I'm leaving NASA, and the next January, I left NASA to go into business, took my eyes off the moon and put them on money, and that's it. Money's what I need. Get rich. And I made a lot of money, and I was a beer distributor and for 2 years in San Antonio, and made a lot of money. But the emptiness was still there. And one day Dottie prayed, she said, why don't you ask God to see if he wants you in the beer business? And I said, well, you pray. I was a prayer book prayer. There was nothing in a prayer book about being in the beer business. So I asked her to pray. Her prayer was, God, if you want Charlie in the beer business, give him peace. If you don't want him in the beer business, make it so miserable that he sells out. Well, 6 months later, it was really miserable, but the money was better and better and better. So now I got a decision: take the money and live with the misery, or get rid of the misery, sell the business. So I decided to sell the business. The next month, I went to a Bible study, and we had at a tennis club, and I didn't want to go, but he was a good friend. He insisted, so we went. And during that weekend, we went from Genesis to Revelations about the life of Jesus in the Bible as it was revealed. And there was a lot of scriptures, but just two that we all know. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. If you believe in him, you'll not perish but have everlasting life. And I thought, hey, to me, that's either true or the biggest lie ever perpetrated against humanity. And so I kept reading, and over in John 14, it says, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to God except through me. Now, that's either true or a big lie. And we get to decide. I make the decision whether it's true or not. And after that weekend, I was sitting in my automobile, and I looked at Dottie and I said, darling, there's no doubt in my heart that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And Lord, come into my life. And when I said that, I experienced the peace of God that was overwhelming. And I knew it was the truth. And I began to read the Bible, and the more, I didn't feel like a sinner. Really, I didn't come because of my sin. I just came because I knew that Jesus was the truth. And I started reading the Bible, and the more I read the Bible, which is God's handbook for life, he started convicting me of my sins. You don't love your wife in Ephesians like you should. And in Proverbs, it says you have cursed your own children. You have the power of life and death in your tongue. And in Malachi, you're cheating God. Those three biggies, that's all it was, just those three things. And so I repented with the boys, and I repented to my wife. I said, Don, I want to love you. And we started building our marriage on the solid rock of Jesus Christ. And that was in 1978. And we've been doing it ever since. And God has given us a platform to go share our faith. And I do a lot of just what I call secular talks. And so I pray about before every talk. I said, Lord, if you want me to talk about you, you have somebody ask me a question. And at the end of my talk, I said, anybody got any questions? And generally, not every time, but generally somebody said, well, did going to the moon change your life? And I said, no, it didn't, but let me tell you what did. And I launched into 5 minutes of Jesus. And so it's an opportunity, and you just live that life. And we got peace and joy. We just celebrated our 61st wedding anniversary, and I think we're going to make it. And thanks to Jesus.
Yes, sir. Mr. Lindell.
Yeah, that's like, I didn't get to the part where I after hearing that, it's all these other things don't matter. It's when you give yourself to Jesus Christ. And I'll tell you, like where I got up to, if you're just reading my book, all the stuff that started to happen to me, with the politics with Donald Trump. I think in my book I say the divine appointment with him in August 15th of 2016. With my past, I know there was a picture, I think I describe it in my book. There was a picture from the early 1970s of Richard Nixon and Elvis Presley. And both of them, and I'm a huge Elvis Presley fan. And then back then when I was a kid, I go, wow, you got to be a president in order to meet, no, I'm sorry, you have to be Elvis Presley in order to meet a president. It wasn't the other way around. Because, Elvis concert was the first concert I went to, but I always thought then with things that happened to me, things I had done in the 80s, I thought, well, there's no way I can ever meet a president. That ship sailed. Well, here I am I remember walking into the White House I was invited for a manufacturers summit by President Trump, and I get in there and it was surreal. The first picture I seen on the wall in the White House was Elvis Presley and Richard Nixon. And I'm going, this had to be divine going in. And I go to sit down and there's like 10 people and President Trump sits next to me and this goes live to the nation. And my friends are at home. They're going, my ex-crack friends and crack cocaine friends and stuff. They're going, what is this crack addict sitting next to the president? Jesus is real, because this would be impossible. And when and I swear all of them I think all of them quit crack that day, going, because we'd always talk about these divine interventions and stuff. Well, on February 18, 2017, after all these little miracles for me of going, this is impossible, and God put me in these positions as this platform is getting bigger, the platform of my pillow, all of a sudden I'm put up here. I'd already been seen by millions or whatever, and I was very, very, I thought I'd be talking about. Well, one of the things I couldn't do, and I say it in the book, is speak publicly. I couldn't speak to 3 people in the room, and people go, well, you sure got over that. Well, let me tell you, it was, for me, I learned it was fear of rejection. Well, you don't get rejected if you don't talk. It's that simple. You don't get rejected if you don't talk. And I could track mine back to I come from a divorced family when I was 7 years old, and I was the only kid. Divorces weren't common then. From a broken home in the town I'm in right now in Chaska, Minnesota. I get to this new school and I'm going, I just felt different, outcast, and it was it manifested into not talking or just showing off. But anyway, we go up to February. I was with my gal Kendra, my wife now, but she kept telling me, she goes, are you sure you're saved? I'm going, yes, I believe in God, and I wear my cross, and well, I went in on February 18, 2017, another divine appointment where it was for veterans, and I'm not a veteran. And it was like, it's kind of like meant to be. I go, I'm not even worthy of being here. All the stories I'm hearing from these guys. And anyway, I did a full surrender on February 18, 2017. And one of the things lifted from me was forgiving myself for something in the 80s that I had done. And God had already forgiven me, but it was like, the weight of my shoulders, just everything was like, it didn't matter. Nothing that mattered. And it was just like a relief that I never felt. And 2 months later, I'm at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis with this big national prayer conference, people praying and bands and stuff, and they Christian bands, and I'm leading them in prayer. I'm going, are you kidding me? I'm going, as I'm saying the prayer, I go, this is impossible. And well, then, like I say, if people knew me then, the difference was, and people, the fight that I'm in now, it's like people say, well, where do you get your strength? Where do you get your strength? And I'm going, I get it from the Lord. It's like, we're in a spiritual battle right now, a biblical proportion. Evil and good. This is just a mesh. And I want to say one more thing too to people. When you talk about prayer, I can run into people, that speech I just did, they say, well, Mike, I prayed for this and prayed for that, and it didn't come true. And it could be, and I said, well, you know what? Those are reactionary prayers. I used to do it all the time when I'd be in jail and stuff. Please, God, get me out. I'll never do it again. But those prayers, I call them reactionary prayers, might not be God's will, whether it's timing or whatever it may be. And then you say, well, where is God's will? God's will is in the Word. So if you stay in the Word every day, and you can be proactive in prayer, and it lines up beautifully. Charlie, you probably know about that in all your experience now, is, where you see things more of a bigger picture. And I tell people, if you don't, right now we're in the biggest revival in history. And if you can't go out now and get people that are out there looking for hope, you're in the wrong business.
Mr.
True.
D, could you touch on that?
I agree. Everywhere I go, we see opportunity to witness. Last week we were in LA, and I spoke at SpaceX, and all these techie guys and all these engineers and all, and we just loved them, and had an opportunity. My wife, especially, I'm speaking to the crew that's going to fly the Dragon here coming up, and it's a private crew actually. Guy, let's see, Jared Isaacson paid for it all, and so they're going to go up and do a spacewalk basically, and come back. It's a 5-day trip. Anyway, I'm talking to them, and we see, and my wife is always open to. She keeps her antennas up, I guess, and gives an opportunity for people to say, well, where's your peace come from? I don't know how she starts it, but it just gets outstanding. And her response to people, she just loves everybody, loves up on them and all. And then when I get a chance before an audience, like I said, let me tell you what really is important in my life. It's Jesus. And he has blessed me beyond measure. I get a lot of complaints, I guess. How do you accept the spiritual side when you're such an engineer? And I said, well, God's the author of engineering, and all our knowledge comes from God, and he is the author of it all. And as we seek him with problems that we have, he's going to show us the way. And there are a lot of, the more specific I pray, the more I see God answer. And a lot of times I feel God speaking to me. For one time I was this is a long time ago, but my mom wrote me about my cousin who was in bed in Charleston, South Carolina. She's about to lose a baby. And so my mom says, pray for Betty. So I started praying for Betty, and I got this impression, go pray for Betty. Well, we were living in San Antonio, Texas at the time. It was 1,200 miles to go pray for Betty. So I'm driving to Austin, which is a 50-mile trip. And so I keep thinking about Betty, go pray for Betty, go pray for Betty. And I said, Lord, if this is you speaking to me and you want me to go pray for Betty, have a great big red truck come over the hill. Man, there came this red truck right over the hill. And so I said, well, Lord, I think you want me to go. But I pulled a Gideon on Lord. I said, well, Lord, I think I'm supposed to go. But for sure, Lord, I don't know what it was, another truck or something like that. And over the hill it came. I said, Lord, if you can get me from here to Charleston and back in a day and a half, I'll go. And so I went, and based on that answered prayer. And so I get to the door, and I knock on the door, and her mom meets me, and she's shocked. What are you doing here, Charlie? I said, I came to pray for Betty. And I'm going to get teary here. And she said, oh, no, let's pray right here. I said, God told me to come pray for Betty. I want to see Betty. So she took me, and Betty's into bed. And I said, Betty, I'm here to pray for you. And she started to cry and said, I've been praying for 4 days, and I didn't think anybody was listening. And so I started praying for her, and give her peace. And no matter what happens, I didn't pray. I'm not sure whether I prayed for the baby to come to gestation, but anyway, we prayed, and she had peace, and I left, and that started a friendship with her, and it's still going on. And so it's been a long time ago, but I get things like that happen to me all the time, and I try to get a confirmation from God that God, if you want me to do this, you got to hit me over the head or whatever, and make me certain that I'm walking in your will. And I remember I was at a Full Gospel Businessman Fellowship convention. So probably 30 years ago and more, and probably 40 years ago now. And I'm up on the stage, I'm on the program, and there's this kid in a wheelchair out there in the audience. And I'm certain that God spoke to my heart. He said, if you'll jump off the stage and go over there and lay hands on this boy, I'll heal him. I refused. And I didn't do it. And it was devastating to me. Lord, I'm later on, but Lord forgave me. But it's being obedient to what you feel inside, and the results of God. Betty lost the baby. The boy might not have been healed, but if you do things in obedience to what God is telling you, it's going to be a tremendous experience for you to have God speak to you like that. So anyway,
it's I think, Mr. Duke, you probably know about this with NASA, where it's often, how do you get these complex things correct? And it's, well, really what you do is you keep working at them until they can't go wrong. I had very early on, I had on Rob Manning, the chief engineer of NASA JPL, and I said, how do you get a rover to another planet? And he said, you just remove everything that can go wrong, and then whatever's left is the thing you have to do, no matter how ugly it is, or rovers aren't sexy. They're not aerodynamic. They got weird things pointing out of them. And he was like, but yet do that and it will succeed. And it kind of makes me think of Mr. Lindell. Is, remember like early on in Trump's administration when you'd never hear about, let's say, domestic terror attacks ever, right? You'd never hear about, things that happened at the border. Trump would come along and intentionally lie. Let's say there was 38 terrorist attacks. He'd come out and say, there were 40 terrorist attacks last year. And then you would get CNN coming out and be like, there weren't 40, there was only 38, and here they are. And now you have CNN covering, stabbings by illegal immigrants. And it was the most, it was like watching Larry Bird play. You're like, dude, this guy's a maestro. In that same way, Mr. Lindell, I wonder if your experience about, converting people and talking about all these experiences, as well as, kind of like Mr. Duke with, you just design it till it can't go wrong. It almost kind of seems like that's your purpose, is any one of these miracles is enough to convert anyone, like you said, drop to their knees, surrender. It's almost like you were given 1,000,000 of these, in the same way that like Trump would lie, but you'd be like, I don't get it. This has happened. So I read your book and I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's all good. And you're still there. Like you said, you're like, I don't know how we're going to get through this one. And it's like, you're just like a walking, talking, just printing off evidence sheets. You're going, I don't know where the evidence is. And it's, you might not see it. And maybe you haven't, total, like you said, forgiven yourself or surrendered, but it's like, it's like a plane dropping flyers. They're just kind of bleeding off of you, and everyone else reads it and they're like, oh yeah, there it is. And you're still looking around. You're like, where is it? I need the 1,000,010th.
Right. Well, and you say with President Trump, that both he and I both play the attack media to perfection. Like you say, if I could not have got the word out about these election platforms going back to 2021, when I was being attacked by every force known to man, my company and everything. And what would I use? Because media has went silent on the right, media has went silent on the elections, where the media on the left attacks me relentlessly. And I use that. I welcome that. I have every one of their phone numbers. They call me and they'll call, Mike, you lost 2 retailers. How do you feel? Did you hear about this? I can say whatever I want. And then they you have this stage. Well, the same, when you're talking about, find the Lord or addiction, talk about like addiction right now, in my story, secular treatment, you talk about that and all that. I just read a thing the other day, it's less than 5% success where all the faith-based treatment that Jesus-based, your Teen Challenge, your Salvation Army is 80% and above. Well, and with that being said, it's like addicts don't want to hear from someone that's never been there, and they sit in front of a desk and say, hey, they shame you, you hurt your family, your truck won't start, your dog doesn't like you, all these things, you spent all your money. We already know that we're addicts, right? We want to hear from someone that has made it through, and you see it, and you see that they're, how they are now, success is basically what because they're looking for hope. And, I remember, when I first set up, because of my story, my friend had been 3 years. He had been straight, and I remember in the book, his name is Dick Van Sloan. He came to me as people say, well, that's your bottom, whatever. I didn't have a money bottom. I could always come up with money. It was, but he came to me, I remember, just out of the blue 3 years later, and he was kind of like, call it a hope match, right? A hope match where I'm going, he come walking in as I'm staring at the ceiling of this house I was losing at, and it was empty of furniture. And I said, Dick, what are you doing? He says, what are you doing? He says, the Lord brought me here. He had gotten from the Lord to come out there and find me. And I said, well, as long as you're here, I got a question. I said, the first question I asked him, I said, is it boring? And he said, no, man, it ain't boring. And to this day, I still don't know, was it because he was off his drugs and drinking, his addiction, or was it because he had found the Lord? Could have been both, don't matter. And, but anyway, so my Lindell Recovery Network, if you go there, everybody, LindellRecoveryNetwork.org, you could spend hundreds of hours there. And all you're going to see is these matches. You put in your age, your addiction, and you're going to see everyone that's made it through, and you're going to see that. And it resonates with people because they see hope in what they see as a similar, oh, they have everything I have, but they've made it through. And then the thing about and by the way, it's free, everybody. And when you get there, getting off the addictions is just a bonus. It's like, the real thing is you're getting saved. And so that's a success. And I think, and when I said to you, I don't know how I'm going to get through. I know I'm going to get through. There's a difference there.
Yeah, sure.
I know I'm going to get through. I just don't know how yet. Right. So that's why I'm saying proactive in prayer. I don't have the worry of how I'm going to, getting through. Sure. There's a difference there. Yes. Now, how I'm going to get through. Such I never give up. I never have a day where it's going, where as I'm getting, people say, well, how do you keep going and fighting? And, people come up to me on the street, Mike, don't give up, keep fighting. We're praying for you. We're praying for you and I'm going, and, the attack on my company, My Pillow, that's been, call it a distraction or whatever you want, but it's, I've had to shift my time and prayers, but I know that we're getting that both, God wins in the end. In fact, I said this to our great real president the other day. He says, well, I said, all the bad things are happening in our country. I told him there's a bucket here, and that's a bucket of, God, of Jesus Christ. I said, sir, you go back to December of 2019 when everybody's physical lives had improved here, no matter where your base was. Like if you were in the streets or you eat with 4 forks, your physical lives had improved, right? Well, then but they weren't going to, hey, God, thank you very much. This is great. No, they're taking it all for granted that Donald Trump did it or some, or decisions did it, and political decision, which might be true, but they're not giving, a nation turned its back on God. So now with the bad things going on now, you have people all over. They're getting on their knees and praying, God, where's the hope? You have the border open, fentanyl pouring across, and addiction has went way up because addiction masks pain. It gives you false courage, all this stuff in there, but it gives you escape from things that's going on. And so you have the perfect opportunity in history here to bring people to the Lord, and they're coming in from both sides of this bucket. And then if you want to talk, which I was also saying to our real president, we become great friends. I said, there's another bucket too. So you have the bucket of people jumping into this, our bucket of Christianity, of Jesus Christ. And I said, then there's another bucket of common sense. And I've told him that. I said, you keep getting indicted and everything. I said, pretty soon you have more votes than voters like Pennsylvania. And, but anyway, I said to him, and he said to me, he goes, well, Mike, our country's getting destroyed. He goes, I don't know if it can be fixed, and he didn't say, he said it something like that. And I said, sir, with God, all things are possible, and him working through you, it'll be fixed faster and stronger than ever. And he goes, yeah, that's right. So, but I always tell him, and I tell everyone, you know, because if you looked up patience, if you Googled the word patience, you're not going to see a picture of me, right? But I've had to learn that. I've had to learn that. And I just like my life, I look back now, and even the bad things that happen, God uses all things for good.
Mm,
And all these bad things are going on right now. If it's bringing the greatest revival in history, let's live it. We're in the greatest time, I tell people, to be alive in history. When
right.
I spoke from the Rose Garden in the spring of 2020, right before the China virus, we all got quarantined. And I said, God, a nation had turned its back on God. God's given us grace for such a time as this. We need to spend time in the Word, back with our families and all this. Well, people come up to me all the time. They go, Mike, this doesn't feel like grace. I said, oh no, it is grace. The biggest grace probably God's ever given at any time in history, because it's all, and I say, you know what? If we're wrong, if we're wrong, we as believers, we all go to heaven. It's a win-win. There's no, you know, it's either end times here, or we get this time to bring everyone to the Lord.
It's in terms of all things for good.
Right.
I think about, I mean, I've had so many guys on this podcast, Green Berets, Navy SEAL, Tier 1, Delta Force. You have these hardcore kind of no BS guys, and, they've completely done a turn. And whereas someone like me, I'm more, I look for the silver linings. These guys who are, they're always based on what goes wrong. If the first one goes wrong, primary, secondary, tertiary, how does it, they only view things and how do they go wrong? And that's why they succeed, is because they never let failure creep in. So their mind is tuned to look more at the negative. And I've had these guys, and one of the guys, Clay Martin, I've had on here a ton. He talks about it. He's like, yeah, I mean, there is like a silver lining. He's like, it's so evil. It's
Yeah.
so comically evil. It's like,
Yeah.
what are they doing? Are they bad? It's like, no, no, no. They're gonna mutilate your children. The same age when I wanted to be a dinosaur, and you now are you able to decide whether or not you want your genitals. They're gonna do this. They're gonna parade it in front of you and not address the 40% suicide rate. He's like, it's so evil that
Right.
it's almost like, it's like when the professor, it's like everyone, I love organic chemistry, but it's like when everyone in the class is failing and the professor just starts giving a really simple answer. He's like, all right, everyone here, there's a chance for extra credit worth 80% of your grade. And it's like he wants you to do well, so he just starts giving you the freebie. And it doesn't make the hard work of the A student any less, but you just see the professor, he's like, I don't want you guys to miss graduation. It's almost like that. It's like if you don't find the positivity and the beauty of a sunrise
Well,
or a baby, it's like here's pure evil. It's
right.
real.
Well, yeah, and I want to address that there.
Yeah.
The evil overplays its hand. That evil is
Yeah.
greedy. That's where we're at, everybody. We're so blessed because evil is greedy. And if you got to think of it, I'm a marketer. I think in terms of this grand scheme of things of marketing. And so when they go put the transvestites in the schools and all that came about in the men and women's sport, all that, everyone will focus on that going, oh, you're taking away from the big picture. They're very good at distraction. One of the best distractions ever was when Afghanistan, when all that went on there and the whole world's against this administration. Well, they did something that was you forgot about Afghanistan
Mhm.
almost overnight. And here's what they did. At the same time, we were working on this election thing. And what they did, it was almost 60 days later, because it kept growing. What a horrible thing it was that had been done over there, pulled everything out, whatever. And what they did, Biden went on stage there and said, here's what he did. He said, if you have 100 people in your company, you have to take a shot. And the whole world went, no, we're not. And you forgot over here, it was a big distraction. And it was, even the media didn't, when it was shut down. Another thing too, if you got to look at on the end positives, you look at stuff like that. I'll give you an example. This just happened, the 34-0 against Donald Trump, 34-0. I said, I prayed that it would be either 34-0 innocent or 34-0 guilty. You know why? If evil was smart, they would have said 29 guilty or innocent, 5 guilty. Mathematically, they could not even deliberate it by each charge by the time that they sat in that room. It's mathematically impossible, everybody. So when they came out 34-0, even Nazis were probably innocent of something. Okay. I mean, this was crazy. So you talk to people in the street, nobody believes this garbage because they overplayed their hand. And they're evil is going, that's what I say. By overplaying their hand, more and more people are jumping into this bucket, and it's uniting the people. It's not only uniting the people for the greatest revival and for Jesus Christ, but it's uniting the people. Call it against the uniparty or whatever the deep forces are. People say to me all the time, "Well, what's attacking our country?" And you never hear me, say stuff about the Democrat Party, or I badmouth the uniparty Republicans that block me all the time. This is a spiritual battle of evil and good. This is uniting the people, all people. I don't care what you are politically, but the people see this nonsensical stuff, like women men and women sports and transvestite or whatever they are, running around our schools, this nonsense. It's like, nobody can fathom it. What was the sense of opening up the border and letting people pour in? I did a thing, if you talk politics, I'm doing a thing called Flipping Democrats. And I went in heart of Chicago, back where, I spent a lot of time in my crack days in inner cities, believe me. Well, I'm back there. There was 500 people in there that had voted for Biden, and then they were now voting for Donald Trump. But it was interesting to me to ask them all questions and film, why are you doing this? Why? Well, almost all the Hispanics said, because the border's open and they're paying cash to these illegals and we're losing our jobs. So they can see the nonsensical things in these micro things. Each one may have a different reason of why when you talk politics. Now, they also, the same thing can be used to this bucket of revival. Everyone's got a thing now, and it's usually negative. The negative things. They're not people, like I said before, people get blessed with all this. They're not changing. If they're not saved, more people get saved with negative than positive. Do you agree, Charlie, on that?
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everywhere I go, I see this craziness, and it just boggles my mind. How people will believe this, that the teachers are teaching these kids that they can be a girl, but they can be a boy. A boy can be a girl. I mean, there's no way. God made them male and female.
Yeah.
And so I've got grandkids and still in high school, and I tell them, I said, fortunately, they're in a Christian school and they're not getting this stuff, but their friends are, and it's just terrible. And trying to fight against this, but I just pray and just pray, Lord, open the eyes of the people and let them see the insanity of what the school districts and some of the teachers are trying to teach these kids, and open their eyes to it. And every chance I get, I take a stand on righteousness.
Right.
It's Mr. Lindell, what you said about the greediness of evil, it makes me think of you, and you're talking about card counting and how you have to stay calm, composed, right? You don't ride the high of a win or the adrenaline dump of a loss. You did cool, calculated, right? Remove emotions, but when it starts to go bad, the only way to statistically make up for it is to start gambling. And then you go, I don't want to do that because, like you said, the boss, at heart, you're a gambler, and it's not rational. It's much more emotion based. And then you're done. The house is going to win. So you have to stay calm, cool, and collected. And it's not the sexy jackpot. It's just mathematically, your chips are building.
That's right.
So what greed is doing right now, they're not playing mathematically. They're not card counting.
They're desperate.
They're getting really high. They're getting really drunk, and it seems like they're making some wins, right? It seems like it's like, well, how do they do this and how do they do that? Every win they make is a short-term win with it's like Mr. Duke. Like, let's say, let's say the rocket can't take off. Let's say they can't figure it out. The quickest thing would be like, I don't know, just dump all the fuel. That's really heavy. Sure. But it's also the fuel. That's what gets you out, right? The tyranny of the rocket equation. It's the same thing. They're making, sure, everyone over 100 employees got to get the vaccine. Stop thinking about the Afghanistan pullout. Well, now all of a sudden you have all these employees, these people who were maybe on the fence going, wait. Why do I got to shoot up this old woman at my local, postcard
Right.
store with a vaccine that's going to give her a heart attack. And so they're gambling now. They're getting drunk, they're getting high, they're getting desperate. And it can
Yeah.
seem scary from our point of view. The God stance, I believe, is more the card counting. Just slow
Yep.
and
Yep.
steady, stay the course. And it's
Right.
not it's not big bang boom, but it's slow and glacial.
Yeah, you gotta, if you look at it like that, this evil is getting desperate and they're greedy. You gotta look at everyone right now. You have to, because that's our hope. That is our hope. One of the things I want to tell everybody, when I did in my speech I just gave in Oregon, and you can go to frankspeech.com and put a speech that I did called How We Got Here. It's one way. It's the only time I ever used a teleprompter. Our great real president let me use his teleprompter for it. And it says all the negatives you thought were negative back then, like December 14th when Donald Trump didn't get back in and all this stuff. What I know now, if he'd have been put back in, it was over. It's over. There's no going back. It's over. We'd have lost our country forever. I know this. So on January 4th, when I was in with the 2 senator runoffs, I was in Georgia and I prayed that the evil would take them both. And I'm not talking the Democrat Party. I said to steal both the senators. And everyone's going, Mike, why would you do that? And I'm going, because if the evil was caught and they would have said, give them back a Republican so they shut up about this election, right? But they didn't do that. They shoved them both in. If they'd have gave one back, everyone would have said, oh, we'll get them in 2022 and we'll campaign harder.
Mm-hmm.
But by stealing them both, everybody remembers where they were. They go, now what are we going to do? Because everyone was thinking about where we were headed with the schools and our children. It was over. Everyone's going, now what? But evil had a safety net, and that was January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And then on January 7th and 8th, 2 days that people don't realize are so important in history. And on January 7th and 8th, 1.2 million people were deplatformed. Churches were deplatformed. Anyone that had spoke out for God or for the election or Donald Trump or all these things, they were deplatformed. Everyone else was put into fear, not even to breathe a word on January 7th of 2021. That's the day I compare it to when I was growing up. We had black and white TVs. We turned them off and they went down to a little tiny dot. And then we turned them back and they came back to life. Now, that dot was our voice. That dot was our voice, and they were not able to do what they believed. They could put it out for good. Once that dot was gone, it's Nazi Germany, it's over. It would have been over. Probably wouldn't have been any coming back, but God didn't let that dot did not go out. So what opened up from that point on is just like when you say we pray that people's eyes get open, it's been the greatest eye opener and reveal in history. People, you can talk to people like, I'll give you an example. When the hurricanes came, this was September of 22, and I was down in Florida giving away my pillows and blankets to this trailer court, all Hispanics. They had lost everything. And it was like a river, but it wasn't a river. That was their dirt road with all of their possessions piled up on both sides like a dike. And we had interpreters there, and we were praying with them and stuff. Their number one thing they said they realized they had lost all their possessions, but they were coming up and saying, they were praying that we didn't lose the American dream, that we didn't lose, that they knew they could get them back if we didn't lose our freedoms and stuff, right? And but the ones, and they were all, across the board, they knew God was their hope. And that a lot of them had, on the spot, so the two things going on is what I'm saying. A lot of them, their eyes were open. This was the first time they could see that, the things that were going on, out there with their physical things, their physical lives just being pummeled. And people see that now. And their eyes are getting open. Remember, they were brainwashed. You talk about the nonsensical things. What people need to realize is that 90% of the people in our country, I think it's even higher than that, want why we're here. The American dream. They want their lives to be good, families, the norm, things that we say to just happiness while we're here, and then, to get to everyone they know that if they are saved, to get other people saved. Well, and so the big lie that was told to us when you go back to the election of 2020, if we would have went to bed that night and which I view that election as most important in history, it broke these algorithms. If they hadn't done that, evil hadn't underestimated that election, we would have all went to bed at 3 a.m. All the states would have been in, and we would have said, oh, we took God out of our schools, all this nonsense. We would have thought we were the voice was the majority. We were just like a 30% or something. And then all this nonsense, this liberal nonsense or whatever you want to call it, this woke, whatever it is, that all they had is all the tools. They had all the media, and they had silenced other media. So they had all the tools to completely convince us of that. But now we know that it's the biggest lie ever told,
It's
I think what we need to do is take our stand and stand for the truth.
Yep.
And a lot of Christians aren't doing that. They're just sort of pulling back into their little cubby hole somewhere.
Yep.
We need to stand and stand on God's word. And he said, if we stand on this and speak the truth and love, people are going to be touched. And so I see a lot of my friends that are just, hey, be quiet, but we can't be quiet. We got to speak out. We got to speak out to truth and love and take our stand. This is the truth.
Yeah.
Whether it's the homosexual stuff or whether it's the pride stuff, whatever,
right.
And good or evil in the politics, take a stand for what is right. Yeah. And so I think I see that more and more and more, Mike. I really appreciate all you do and the stand you're taking and the persecution you're receiving, because if we must be doing something right, because the devil is on our case.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. If we were messing up, everything would be hunky dory. The fact that it is so in your face, the fact that it was the prince or the king, and there's that painting, and there's clearly like the face of Baphomet in it. And you have people being like, "What's that about? What is it?" I mean, it's like the anti-Batman symbol. Like Batman doesn't exist, and it's like, why are they shooting the thing up at the sky? It's kind of creepy, and it's what Mr. Duke said is the people are like, hey, lay low, just hide behind, don't make any noise. I have absolutely no sympathy for that. That is cowardice to the worst degree. I would rather an enemy that's pure evil and at least stand up and fight me. The people that are like, hey, just be quiet, go sit down. I'm like, dude, I don't. Kobe Bryant say about lazy people. It's kind of how I feel about cowardice. I don't understand you. I don't want to understand you. That is not even it's just bye. But I know we're coming up on an hour, so I did want to share just my own for you, Mr. Lindell. The what are the odds story. Everyone that watches this podcast knows, I, kind of my own against the odds. I got into medical school out of college. A couple months later, lost a brother to suicide and kind of went down nearly a decade of unimaginable terror. Started this podcast, and in summer 2020, when I had like 100 subscribers on YouTube, it was nothing. I used to just post the links on Reddit, hoping someone would watch. Some dude found it that ended up across the entire nation, lived like 30 miles from me, was like, hey man, it's like, I love your show. I listen to you and Joe Rogan. I'm like, that's quite a gap. He's got like 100 million subscribers and I've got 100. And he was like, I wish you did more shows. And I'm like, well, I'm 30 and I live with my parents and I work at a liquor store, so I don't really have time. And he was like, well, how much would you need to have time? And I was like, well, he's like, how long did it take you to get in medical school? I was like, well, I almost failed out my freshman year, but then it took me 3 straight years of studying to get into medical school. And he's like, well, I'll give you 3 years of living expense. And mind you, I'm making like 200 a week at a liquor store. He was like, I'll pay you, X thousands a month. Go get an apartment, nothing lavish, and do the pot. And I was like, all right, man. And I think, and he had seen actually in one of the episodes he had seen was with you, Mr. Duke. And I was like, all right, man, like let's do this. So it started on April 17th, 2021. And it was a cordial agreement, a business agreement. He's one of my best friends now. He goes, you have 3 years to turn it profitable. And if we don't, we part ways as friends. And I was like, absolutely, man of my word, let's do it. I get banned from YouTube the next year for talking about vaccine injury in the 2020 election. Not just with anyone, Dr. Malone, Dr. McCullough, the guys that would eventually go on Rogan and be his biggest episodes ever. I had them on first multiple times, banned from YouTube, banned from iTunes, Reddit, Twitter, everything. I'm banned from websites I don't even know exist. And all right, well, just kept trucking forward. And I would just be like, I have to keep doing the right thing, even if it doesn't work. And coming up on April 17th of this year, so the 3-year mark, 1,095 days. And I'm on day 1,093. And I'm just like, maybe this, and I started to come to peace with it. I was like, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to do. Maybe I did my thing, but now it's time to move forward. And from Frank's speech, Joe Altman calls me and goes, this is on April 15th, and goes, hey, we want to fund you to, basically enough to cover rent and utilities. And that was day 1,093 out of day 1,095. And that was 10 years to the day of my brother's suicide. And I called my mom, and I'm going to try not, because I don't want to be that guy, but I called my mom and I was celebrating and I started crying. So whether you need a feel good story and it's Mr. Duke walking on the moon, or whether you're more of an analytical mind and you need mathematical uncertainty, I don't know what the odds of that are. So not as crazy as, as Mr. Lindell, but like, I mean, you're talking about, clock ticking midnight. I remember that happened, and I just sat down and I was just like, there is zero rational. What 1,500 interviewed Mr. Duke, Mike Durant, the Black Hawk Down pilot, General Flynn. I've had on all these guys, and this worked. And I was just like, what are the odds? So that's my closing thought to you, Mr. Lindell and Mr. Duke. So
Did he give you a promo code?
he did. TPC, my pillow.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes,
Let's not forget that.
Yes, you are. TPC on my pillow. I can't right now because it's like 1,000 degrees in Maine. But I wear the slippers every episode. I got the robe right there. I do have the sheets on my bed. I got the pillows on my bed. I got the plushie. They are the biggest sponsor of the show, and so is Frank's Speech. Please go to Frank's Speech.
And everybody, and Frank's Speech, when we talk, I go back in time to after, when I talk about January 7th and 8th, when I was out there getting attacked in January, after I put out the movie Absolute Proof, the media went silent on me. No attacks, no nothing. And that scared me, going, boy, if you want to really silence someone, you just don't even attack them. I became non-existent. If you look back then, almost for 14 days back then, and then I did something so bombastic, the media had to attack me again. I asked the machine company to sue me, and they did, but I wanted to get back in the news to get the word out. Well, that's why I started Frank's Speech, was so that voice would not be silenced. And one of the things is, you look at now where people get their information, it's not from the Foxes of the world where lawfare has kept them silent. They're like weather channels that can't report hurricanes or tornadoes. All of them, from Newsmax to Fox. I see people depressed around the country. I go, you're watching too much of that, because you need to hear the hope. The hope is where you're getting it from all these other social media sites that came up, from Truth Social, from Gab, Getter, Frank Social, Instagram, all these places, and even Twitter, and even somewhat the old Facebook. But people are getting there. It's like word of mouth, only it's bigger. Word of mouth, and having podcasts that are out there. When you say we got to get the truth out, people are hearing the truth, and it is working. They had a commercial back in the day. It was a shampoo commercial, said, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and so on and so on. Very famous commercial. Well, now with our voice, we tell 500 or 1,000, they tell 10,000, they tell 10,000, because people are looking for the truth and hope. So it spreads like wildfire. And that's what, where we might not have, if this hadn't happened, we might have been just keep getting brainwashed all the time. If you think that there was a right and left here, no, it was, we had to get God's word out there. And this is what's happening. And, well, I'm just so thankful for not only the amazing stories like your, Charlie, of coming here, your story bringing so many people to God now. And here's a guy that went to the moon, and that's not nearly as important as the day you got saved. That changed everything. But you needed the moon story to make it powerful for other people to look at it. And And Tommy, your story and coming over to Frank's speech, I mean, what a blessing it's going to be. We are going to, by the way, we're going to have big announcements coming out over the next couple of weeks, because this voice now has to go to the next level, and you're going to hear a lot about it over the next 2 weeks before well, you'll hear about it, but obviously the news, I'll have to go get attacked or something to get the word out. Like you say, Mike Lindell is this. Did you hear about our new platform, frankspeech.com, and what we're doing?
Mike Lindell's wearing a clown outfit outside the White House. What's he saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Go to frankspeech.com.
Whatever it takes. I'll go get inside a claw machine on Jimmy Kimmel if that's what it takes.
And I wanted to say again with Mr. Duke, so when I talk about kind of coming back to God, I'm like, I mean, again, what are the odds that again, with a small platform, it's still pretty small, with a small platform at the time on YouTube, what are the odds that like the closest physical scientific representation of an angel turn me back to God? What do you mean? I mean, he comes from space. It's Charlie Duke. He literally comes from space. And of all things, he tells me, it's like, by the way, I'm like, I mean, come on now. Like, what are the odds of that? And it's like, all right, pretty small. I'm like, all right, but it's I think for the analytical minds, I think you kind of need to have that numerical impossibility before you start going, there's another force at play here. And to not think there is stupid. Is you start going, there's something else here. It's like money laundering. You're like, there's $100 going in and $1 million going out at that CVS. You're like, something's going on here. You have to. So, Mr. Lindell, Mr. Duke, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you both for doing this. The links to both of your Moonwalker, and What Are the Odds are in the description. And guys, the link to Frank's speech is in the description as well as My Pillow. I couldn't be more grateful for this. It was therapeutic for me, and I hope someone out there, I hope it can help your life in even the smallest way. So, gentlemen, thank you both so much.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless. God bless everybody.
Very much.
Yes, sir. God bless everybody. Thank you so much for